Alright, the first step is obviously making our ground plane. So to make that, I will make a plane subdivided by a lot, and using proportional editing, I'll give it the first basic shape. You'll also see that I use grease pencil to draw the look that I want the landscape to have. It's pretty fun to use it for these kind of things. And now, as always, I will need to make my own mountains. For that, I go back to World Creator, on which I have made far too many videos at this point, breaking down my exact process on how to color it, how I make the mountains. I've posted multiple long tutorials of all of that on my Patreon as well. And yeah, I import it into Blender, I texture it, and then I put it in my scene. But one mountain is not enough. We need a second mountain. Now we need a third mountain. Sometimes just rotating or mirroring a mountain is not enough to add some variety, so you gotta make some more. And now if I put in a basic sun and an HDRI, you'll see the mountains are already here. Now you may think that the mountains are looking exceptionally mossy. The way it works is basically messing around with the sheen, and I've found that this works the best usually in most lighting scenarios. I've tried a lot of ways and this one sticks the best. So it starts with using the Fresnel node.
Fresnel. Fresnel.
Well, I guess I can use whichever one I want. So sticking the Fresnel node into the color ramp, putting into a multiply, just crunch up the color ramp into a position where you're happy enough with the sheen. Sometimes you may like more, sometimes you may like less, depending on your scenario. And that all goes into the sheen. For the color, we can just use the exact same. You may want to saturate it and increase the value of it a bit further so it sticks out a bit more, because that's the point of a little bit of the sheen, that mossy look, the way it shines on light. Also, just a quick mention that if you would like to get access to the scene and use it for whatever you would like, you can access it on my Patreon, including every single scene I've made so far and a lot of tutorials. And now I also started recently uploading a lot of reference packs on there, because I recently did a lot of trips in the Himalayas and also in the Dolomites and a few European cities. So I am going to be uploading a reference pack for a lot of stuff in the coming months, including a lot of future videos that I have planned for the Patreon, such as tutorials and asset packs, etc. So if you're interested, it helps support the channel and you get a lot in return, so I'd say it's a fair deal. Now back to the video. After putting all the mountains in a position I roughly am okay with, I begin to texture the front, and it's just a basic texture, just messing around with the colors a little bit, and then I'm not happy with the detail it has at the front yet. So to give a little bit of an extra oomph to it, I steal one of the normal maps off my other mountains and just use it in on this one. And it kind of works well, surprisingly. I've used it before on some other thing. I don't remember which one. It's a weird hacky way that'll break apart if you look too closely, but for something like this, it'll work because it's gonna have a lot of foliage and stuff. Throw in a volume, very low density, and make the color a bit more blue because we want a bit more of that overcast look. Now, since Blender has real-time compositing, I might as well take use of it. And I just do a light pass on it, just like increase a little bit of the detail and sharpness, reduce the contrast a little bit, and do some lens distortion, put on some glow, and now while working in the viewport, the scene just looks kind of more nice and interesting. Then I go on to make some extra dramatic shadows because I want some sunlight just beaming through, and for that, again, just the same thing, using a plane, noise, texture, alpha. I've talked about it on every single video because I use it every single time. Now to something more interesting. I wanted some clouds in the scene, and I didn't want to just go with the standard way of just using a lot of cloud VDBs to make it, because I'd seen a very interesting procedural shader. It's made by Thomas Marcus and it's for free, so I wanted to try it. It looked pretty cool. And I bring it into my scene, I enlarge the cube by a lot so it encompasses all the mountains, but it just sadly doesn't work out. I play around with the values for probably an hour just to get it right because I was so adamant into making it work, but no matter how much I mess around with it, it just didn't work because the main problem is that it seems like the cloud shader is designed to be viewed from above, and at the bottom there's a very harsh cutoff line that I did not seem to be able to break. And so I just gave up and decided to use the traditional method instead. And for this, I've talked about this countless times as well. There is this basic cloud shader on top of these VDBs. that you can find for free on all sorts of places. And now I start assembling these clouds in our landscape in a way that I'm happy with, because it's now about your artistic choices that you make into the landscape. It's not about the technical stuff anymore, it's about what you like and your taste. Blender gives us so much flexibility in terms of volumes now that you can make so many different looks. Like here, if you reduce the volume bounces, it'll become so dramatic. It's crazy. But I don't want that for our scene, but that's an option. I will make it pretty soft because I want a more dreamy look here. I'm not trying for hyperrealism in this. I want to achieve a more dreamy, like almost a surreal-esque vibe, if that makes sense. Now the next move is bringing in trees, and I made these trees for my last project and I'm just going to reuse them because unless you're a tree expert, it's pretty hard to tell the difference when the trees are the size of like 5 pixels. And especially the region that the scene is inspired by, which is like Tajikistan and kind of maybe Kazakhstan, we could say, their trees resemble these trees anyways, so it works. Now I'm using scatter flow to scatter these, but you can use any kind of add-on. It does not really matter unless you are using something extremely specialized for a specific use case. Most scatter add-ons will do the job in basic scatters like this. The main thing that we should be focusing on is how we scatter. And I want to scatter in a very realistic way, because sometimes if we kind of just wing it and don't pay as much attention in the groups and the clumping, then sometimes it can look very unnatural. So here I'm trying to make sure that the scale tapers off a little bit as they go up, and also there's the tree line, so we have to make sure that after that there's almost no trees or very little trees. And in the foreground I am scattering in the same way. The main purpose is making sure that they blend in with the environment, if they seem natural in the way they are shaped and clumped together. But also they serve the composition because they're not the same thing. You could scatter something very naturally, but it still may not serve your composition. So whenever doing a scatter, keeping these two in mind separately is very helpful for an optimal result. Now here I'm sort of making like this ditch almost, just like a crevasse that is on this landscape. It could form for dozens of reasons, but here it just helps the composition, so that is the reason I'm making it here, because I want a little bit of snow and just this more of this change in elevation, so it's not just the same. And here I'm gonna have less trees because there's less sunlight that reaches there, so it makes sense there's not gonna be as many trees that grow here. I also want to make paths because there are certain places where there's more vehicles driving or people walking, sheep, horses, cows, whatever, and for that I am using the grease pencil to draw the paths out at first, because I want to make sure that whenever I move the camera, the grease pencil drawings stay in the same place so I can draw the things out. And I'm using a mask with a mix shader with a different texture and then just painting it out with a brush. I want to make it very unnatural, so in some places it's thinner, some places there's more gravel or less gravel. Now when that's looking good, I also throw in an area light for the lighting. In the lighting, I just plug in a noise texture into the area light, just turn the strength up by a lot to create some contrast, and here we get some shadows. Like, I don't even need a plane, honestly, for this. This gives a bit more control because I don't want to light the background at all, just this one in the front, and this helps me do that very easily. There's other ways you could go about this, like you could create a light linking setup here, which I bring in some of these yurts, which is what they call, I guess, huts, in which the nomads that live in these Central Asian mountains would move around in. I made these for a previous project, so I am kind of just reusing them. Again, you can get these on the Patreon as I'm gonna upload the entire file there. So now to scatter them, because it is kind of separated in multiple chunks, because I did not want to merge everything, because if I want to make changes in the future, I wanted to carry on to everything and not just one thing, and instancing. So I create an instance of the collection itself. And then I'm using this add-on called Clicker, which is a free add-on you can get. And from there, I'm just clicking and scattering wherever I want. And I can set more parameters to randomize things, and it just works. For the foliage, just throwing in a lot of variety that comes in with this add-on, and just ryegrass and dandelions and large sticks, just all sorts of things that would make sense to be here, maybe some bushes. And now I'm doing a test render over here. Now, good way to just see what is lacking, what could be changed, what are the things I'm happy with, what I'm not. For example, these huts could definitely use some doors or just even a cloth separating them from the outside, because it doesn't make sense for them to be completely open. And that is the best way where these instances come in handy, because now if I add this cloth draping down right here, it's gonna go into everything. And to randomize it, I just make this very basic setup with the color ramp is set to multiply, and using this object info node with the random plugged into the factor of the color ramp, which gives randomized colors onto every single yurt. I get this free just collection of scrappy little looking metal stuff, and I just make some few things using these. This little box thing here is actually a toilet, I believe, that these people make, like a portable thing which they can break down and then rebuild. Kind of practical, I guess, if you have to pack up your entire house and move around constantly. I also just bring in a lot of random objects from Sketchfab or any other place you like you're getting your assets from, and just dumping them in here to create some more variety and make it feel more lived in. Because it needs to have story, it needs to make sense how these people live. They have their cars, they have random objects, they have their actual livestock, which I will be bringing in. And that is next. I bring in some extra cows that I made in my previous video. I think I uploaded a long breakdown of these two shots on the Patreon, and I made the horses and the cows for that. And since they're already set up and ready to be scattered, I just bring them in, use a collection, and just paint out wherever I want the cows to be. And they're already randomized, they have multiple animations and colors, and they're perfect to be used here. I also bring in horses because that would add more variety and help with making the place feel more believable. And here I do another test run. And now the scene is coming along pretty well. I like it quite a bit. It's very green, it's very lush. In the background, I feel like there's something missing. I'll keep working on it to see what the idea is that I come up with to add a little more interest there. For now, it's coming along alright. Maybe I could reduce the scale of these long, big bushes in the front. Maybe add some characters, I believe. That would help a lot. Maybe add some additional flowers. That could help, definitely, because there's a lot of color missing. It's just green. If I add in a little bit, maybe violet, that would help. So I do exactly that. I paint out a new collection of scatter, which will be these violet little flowers. Not too many, just enough, because especially in this season, which I guess you could call it monsoon, I guess, and it rains a lot, it's very humid, it's the perfect temperature, not too cold, not too hot. So a lot of flowers would bloom here, and I already have some dandelions, but adding more variety is always great. So for humans, I always just use human gin because I am not doing massive close-ups with high extreme detail, and even these characters would pass for like pretty close enough, like they look pretty good. And I just use them as a base because I create my own clothing and simulate it in Marvel's Designer. It's a bit time consuming. It took me almost a day. Like, I mean, I use templates as well, like these, and just modify them a lot, but the modification sometimes can take a lot because by the end of it, when I'm done modifying something, it looks completely different based on fitting the character and the why. Because here I use the lab coat, and I turned that lab coat into a traditional-esque coat jacket with double layers. Then I do the same for the lady, and I pose them as well, and I animate the posing so I can simulate it, as you can see here. And then they're ready to be textured. And I mean, clothing is pretty simple to texture. Just the best thing is adding some kind of wrinkly normal map, which I'm doing here, just blending it in with the threads normal map, I guess, of the cloth. And blending these two together gives a pretty chill result. I like it a lot. For the lady, I put in a lot more effort, I think, because they just tend to wear more eccentric stuff, like these kind of silver metal stuff on their clothing, and also some kind of necklaces, and they have more colorful patterns on their pants, for example. I also add a little bit just wear and tear, just like color decaying and stuff. Not decaying, I guess, fading. And just for that, I'm using ambient occlusion. I mean, you can see the setup here, just crunching down the harshest values and then using a noise texture to break that up a little bit. And I mean, they look like a pretty cool couple, honestly, not gonna lie, so they work. So I decide for a good position to put them in, but again, because just this vast scale, I honestly feel like they deserve their own shot where they're a bit more in focus, so I'll see something that I like based on that. But I also figured out what I could do. Maybe this kind of misty rain-esque vibe in the back where there's a lot going on there which you don't exactly know what, but you can feel something's happening, is probably good, because without it, it just feels so bland and barren. And in the end, I also ended up figuring out kind of a cool shot with the lady out of focus, and because it's the guy in the back with his stick to, I guess, herd the cows and stuff. I like the composition of this. So then I just render these both out, do just light color grading in DaVinci, and here is the final result, as you saw already. So I also know that I have not been uploading remotely as much as I used to, and I apologize for that because I was very busy, but there is some good stuff coming out of it. For example, I have a lot of references that I've gathered up. I think I already mentioned that in Patreon thing just a bit ago that I did at the start of the video, but just there's a lot of stuff coming for the Patreon based on that, and some extra videos. So I've been planning to post, like there's this one that I did for ArcViz stuff. I just made a scene, so I'll just post about that. But yeah, anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching till the end. That's very cool if you did. I appreciate you a lot. And I will see you in the next one, which will probably come not as late as this did.